Well, first off, good afternoon. Obviously, last few days have been somewhat hectic for us in terms of like what we were trying to accomplish, and I think we really went into this looking for trying to land some pitching that would give us some stability and some experience. You think about the last few months, it seemed to be like when we weren't being able to get deeper into games, it really had an adverse effect on us. So that was certainly one of our goals, and we also wanted to try to do it in a way that we wouldn't be giving up a lot of future talent. And so that was something that was sort of critical in our decision making. And needless to say, obviously today we felt like we took a couple steps forward without having to sacrifice our future. So, overall, we still want to compete. Hopefully we can get on that run and make a little noise still in the Central.
First question, Jim Hayes, Valley Sports Midwest.
Hey Mo, were you guys at all close to landing any other kind of deal with it? I know you were pursuing other things too. Were there any times where you thought you were close to maybe heading in another direction outside the guys that you ended up with?
Yeah, obviously it's a sort of vague question, but and I can't get into specifics on like where we were, who we were chasing, and all of that. But yeah, I mean there were multiple times we thought we were getting closer on some things, and that over the last really 48 hours just didn't happen. And when we got in this morning, I thought for sure we were going to end up with someone, and that didn't happen, and so we ended up where we were. But as you can imagine, in this type of business and in these types of time frames, you do throw a lot of different things up against the wall, seeing what might stick. And for us, we still believe in this team, but we also still believe in where we're going next year. And so that was, critical in our decision making.
Thank you.
Katie Wood, The Athletic.
To see how the team plans on implementing Happ and Lester here in the rotation and what it means for Jake Woodford. What's the blueprint, I guess, on how these pitchers in the rotation will shape up over the next couple of weeks until Miles and Jack potentially return?
Well, I think for us is it adds immediate depth to our rotation. Obviously, both guys will be given a chance to start. In terms of what it means for Jake, that's still a TBD. Obviously we do have an off day on Monday, so we can hit the reset button on how we want that rotation to look. But, I think for now, the thought of that was, again, just bringing some people in that could give us those innings. And hopefully that allows us to, again, stretch out that bullpen to where we're not putting too much pressure on them day in and day out.
I think the main focus that you made pretty clear over the last month is getting durable arms and inning leaders, and you potentially get that with Happ and Lester. Is this kind of I know their numbers haven't reflected much success over this season, but is the plan here to kind of turn them into a Wade LeBlanc-esque kind of starter where they can get 5 innings or so and hopefully turn over to the bullpen from there?
That's sort of the baseball model right now, right? Like how people are using starters. But I also think, taking two guys that can take advantage of this ballpark. Obviously, it's a pitcher-friendly ballpark, and hopefully that allows them to have more success as part of the equation as well. But yes, I mean, ultimately, when you look at where we were, a month ago or a month and a half ago, we were having trouble getting into the second or third inning, and that just was putting an enormous amount of stress on different areas of our club. And so, ultimately, we hope that not only can they give us those innings, but it also brings a little bit of veteran leadership as well into that clubhouse and guys that have had success at a high level.
Derek Gold, St. Louis Post-Dispatch.
Mo, given the price that we saw on the market, was it mostly rentals that you were looking at, mostly guys that you'd only have through the end of this year?
I think one of the things that we were focused on was just try to see about if there could be something that we could key in on for 2022 or beyond. But I mean, as you could see, that wasn't really something that was available. I mean, there were a couple players that were moved that had that type of control, but I think you saw what the price was to get that type of player, and for us, it just didn't make sense. You can argue how you view our top 5 prospects at the minor league level, but we just didn't feel like moving any of them made sense for these types of deals. So, ultimately we did turn to more of getting through the 2021 season, and that's where we settled.
You touched on it a little bit. Is this a case where do these moves make your team better, or is it just a matter of where it stops it from getting worse?
No, I hope it makes us better, first off. Secondly, I think it also allows someone like an Oviedo to continue to develop and not do it at a major league level or in that pressure cooker, and allow him to grow at a more natural pace. So I think it takes a little pressure off others. It allows us, I think, to, again, when you look at putting a major league team on the field, sometimes it's nice to know you're running someone out there that's been there and done that. And I think now we see that.
Last question I want to ask you. These are a couple of guys who were available as free agents this past winter, and you were very confident in the pitching depth that you had. Just in general terms, the winding road that pitching has taken you this year with injuries and trying to hold on to find your way back to a couple of guys who are available just for cash.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that question is or if that's more of an observation, but, clearly throughout the course of the season, we've had injuries and we've had to push people. We had, I think, some performance questions in terms of what we thought we were going to get out of individuals. But, net, we were at the trading deadline, and we thought if we could add some veteran leadership and stability to our rotation, it made sense. So that's where we ended up. Obviously, in a perfect world, the decisions you're making in the off season play out. You don't have injuries, and you get through the year. So I think that answered what you were asking. So hope I got that right.
Brendan Schaefer, KMO VTV.
Mo, specific to Jon Lester, was familiarity seeing him on the opposing side so many times over the years, was that a factor in you guys going after him, knowing what he's capable of, and hoping he can kind of recapture some of that for you?
Obviously we know a lot of him, and so that does help. But it's also just someone that understands the game. And I think for him, seeing what was happening in Washington, he wanted to go to a place that was still trying to compete. And from my understanding, there were a couple teams that looked a lot like us that had interest in him. But I think he had some familiarity with us as well, and I think he was excited to join the Cardinals. And I can say when I spoke to him, he seemed pumped about coming here and recognized that we're still trying to fight for something.
Jeff Jones, Belleville News Democrat.
Mo, you said that you thought this morning that you had something that was going to get done that ended up not getting done. Was that on the position player side?
No. There were some things that we looked at from the position player side, but I would not characterize anything as really close on that end.
We talked to Schulte a bit ago. He said that Lester would be here Sunday. Is part of the reason for that delay because they're still sort of verifying everything is checked out with the COVID outbreak in Washington? Is that involved in that at all?
No. It's his son's birthday tomorrow, and so he had asked if he could spend the day with his son, so I said yes.
Got it. The last one for me, sort of now that you've seen how these last 2 months played out, obviously with the ultimate benefit of hindsight, is there a wish that maybe there had been more aggression in the market earlier this summer, given kind of the way the deadline played out and the way the prices sort of seemed at least to increase as we came down to it here today?
I don't understand that question, but if you're asking me, do I wish we had more depth prior to when the season started? The way the year played out, of course. If you're asking me if we should have been more aggressive in the trading deadline earlier, I'm not sure that would have mattered no matter how we thought about it. Ultimately, you get the highest return by waiting the longest, because then you create a market, and you ultimately saw over the last couple of days what people had to pay for premium talent.
Ben Frederickson, St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Ben?
Sorry, I can't try to hear. Mo, I know you don't comment on the individual discussions you've had, but sometimes you've addressed reports of players when they come out. Did you guys have any interest in discussing Trevor's story, or were there any conversations you had leading up to the deadline about potentially adding him?
You know, not talking about specific players, but you know, clearly when you're looking at you know, premium talent and what was being asked for in the market, it was just not something where we were looking to give up one of our top 5 prospects. You know, again, we as an organization are very much focused on continuing to try to find ways to win, not just this year, but in the future. And, you know, for us, we're pretty excited about what we have coming. But in terms of like specifically talking about individual players that may or may not have been traded over the last 48 hours, it was something like, you know, it's our responsibility or my job or my team's job to, you know, touch base with lots of teams and make sure we understand what the ask might be or the cost might be, and then internally we decide if it makes sense or not. So I know that's not a great answer to your question, but you know, I can tell you that, you know, from A to Z, I think we try to make contact with people.
Do you have thoughts on what happened in Chicago? I mean, you guys went toe-to-toe with that team for a long time, and now it's going to look drastically different. Just thoughts on what took place there today? You
know, obviously a lot different approach, but they were in a place where they had a lot of expiring contracts, and they had to make a decision on how to best handle that. I think they did very well from what I could tell from their return on those. So that's not great news, because in time those kind of players end up playing in the big leagues. But you know, when you're looking at our division, it's still very competitive, and you know, you have one team that's turned the page now to 2022, and there's a few of us that are still worried about 2021.
Benjamin Hockman, St. Louis Post-Dispatch.
Hey Mo, we asked Mike Schultes the other day. I was going to ask you, now spinning it forward the rest of the season, what are some things that the St. Louis Cardinals must do to, I'd say just win more, but like get winning streaks and climb up the standings?
Yeah, obviously this club has struggled to find that sustained success or that, you know, long run really since April. So I think, you know, what we've seen over the last couple weeks is when we've had, you know, quality starting pitching, it has ended up with more positive outcome. But, you know, I think from an offensive standpoint, you're finally seeing an outfield that was envisioned last offseason all playing together, and their production looks like it's going in the right direction. I think, you know, overall it comes down to simply just playing good baseball, meaning get good starting pitching, quality bullpen, solid defense, which we still believe we have a good defensive club, and of course timely hitting. And, you know, I think all of those things have been a focus at some point or another during the season, and now you've got to put it all together.